So we're gonna do something kind of weird today because I'm in the mood, and also I just got two very different Transformers figures in the mail, and I want to talk about them. So we're gonna pack it into this, I guess, double review. Quick story time though. I do want to thank Shozy Store for sending me both of these figures. Although funny enough, when they're sending me this drift figure, there are some technical difficulties with the shipping address, and they weren't able to get it to me. So I just went ahead and ended up ordering it on my own and paying for it because it's a figure I really wanted anyways. Speaking of Shozy Store, in just a few days they're gonna be having their major annual 11/11 promotion, which is on November 11th, where they just go on a massive sale of a bunch of their products, and they have several different discount and coupon codes. They didn't ask me to say this part, but I do want to genuinely say from the bottom of my heart, they are by far the most trusted online company that I've ever purchased from. I am certainly happy to help out. So this is Bingo Toys BT02 Wind Girl. I'm really not very familiar with this character. I'm not even gonna pretend to know. This is not typically the kind of figure that I'd order, and so I went into this very skeptical. I wasn't really sure what to think of it, and the first thing I'll mention is she does have a backpack, but the thing about her is it looks good on her. Like, I can genuinely say if you remove the backpack, those wind turbines and some of the jet wings, she wouldn't look as cool, and I can't say that about most other Fembot figures. Red is my favorite color, and the kind of matte chrome red that we have going on here, it's some of the nicest paint I've seen, and her articulation is... it's really hard to explain. On paper, it's really good, but in execution, for whatever reason, it just becomes less and less pleasant to work with. For example, her thigh articulation allows for her to kick almost all the way up to her chest. She has double jointed elbows, knees, and basically all the works that you could expect. For one thing, her head, it can be kind of frustrating to pose around because she has this massive hunkin' helmet. On the back of that helmet, she has this bow ribbon thing that looks really cool actually, but it falls out all the time, and for the sake of me, I cannot find my super glue, so it's just been falling out throughout this whole review. Her feet are also so weird, man. They have this weird rocker, but it's only a one-way rocker, so they can go front and back, but they don't go sideways. But suffice it to say, she does not have a functional ankle tilt, and to me, that's pretty unacceptable. Let's talk about the accessories really quick, just to get that out of the way, I guess. She does have quite a few of them, but the highlight is, of course, her onslaught of swords. She has 6 swords. There's 2 smalls, 2 mediums, and 2 larges. She also has a bunch of different alternate hands because her hands are too small to actually be posable, so they just swap out ball joint hands, and I'll talk about those in a second. And then she also comes with this display stand, which I was pretty excited to see when I got it, and then very quickly got unexcited. It's not very good. For one thing, obviously it's pink. Nobody asked for a pink stand, but on top of that, it's just not very functionally good, and none of the joints on the arm are tight enough to hold up a figure on its own. So that's the last we're gonna talk about that. I'm just gonna be using my Amazon figure display stands for the rest of this. Her transformation, it was certainly something. It was not what I expected. It's actually very simple, and as I was following MGo's review to Transformer, I remember along the way thinking this is gonna be a horrible looking alternate mode, but then when we actually got to that alternate mode, I was shocked at how good it looks, and it's one of those rare situations where 2 + 2 = 10. For whatever reason, the math didn't add up in the transformation, and even though it seemed too simple, when you actually get there, it feels right, it looks right, and it's pretty cool. This is where I want to talk about the weapon storage. It's really good because you're able to use all the different swords to store. 2 of them become basically extended wings, and then the other 4 become these back... I'm not very good with this stuff. I don't know what those are called, but the point is you can see them there. Speaking of weapons, I guess here's where we're gonna cross into a lot of the problems I have with this figure, and that is the first one. In her jet mode, the small and medium swords basically connect together with a little peg so that you can put them onto the back of her jet mode, and it is a stupidly tight connection. On camera, as I was trying to disconnect them, it broke. The peg just broke, and you can see it on both the swords. Aside from that, I've just noticed that her tolerances have been getting weaker. Her thighs, for example, now squeak when they rotate. They didn't start off by doing that, so I don't know why they are now. As you try and move them up, she has a secondary like bend joint at the thigh, and while I appreciate the sentiment, I feel like there had to be a better way to do this. Oh, also, these wind turbines that are on her backpack in robot mode, they're getting looser, so they just kind of fall. Normally, this is something that could be easily solved with some floor polish, but the issue is that this is a die-cast metal piece, and floor polish is notorious for not being able to tighten up die-cast metal. It'll just rub it off and go back to being loose after like 20 minutes. That same complaint does extend to the little wing things that are connected to her turbines. Let's talk about the interchangeable hands. They're not good. The hands themselves, I have some serious frustrations with. So you have the closed-fisted hands that have no holes in them, that are just balled up fist, and then you have the same balled up fist, except they have a hole in the hand so that they can hold swords. And normally, of course, I wouldn't care. I don't really care that they gave us more options. The problem is they designed the transformation to jet mode for her hands to be able to store into the wind turbines, and they only store properly if it is the completely closed balled up fist. It doesn't even even work with the balled up fists with the holes in them, which are like barely bigger. And I think that's a huge design issue. Oh, did I also mention she doesn't like to stand at all? It's really frustrating. And it just feels like it's stacked frustrations, because on top of the fact that she is required to use a stand, and on top of that, the fact that the stand she does come with is kind of garbage, to add insult to injury, to get her plugged into any kind of base stand is a massive pain in the butt. The problem is she has this giant backpack that reaches down and completely covers it. In order to get a stand connected to it, you need to basically swivel the whole thing out, but that's not all, folks. It gets worse than that, because the plug on her back is stupidly tight. It is really challenging getting anything plugged into the back of her, and that includes the stand she's with and the stands that I have. So that's enough about Windblade for now. We'll come back to her at the conclusion of this video.
Find your inner compass. Loyalty is but a flower in the winds of fear and temptation.
What the were you saying?
That's what I'm saying.
So we're gonna switch up notes a little bit here, because this is much more my kind of figure, but here's where I'm gonna spit another hot take. I hate this character from Age of Extinction and The Last Knight. This character is basically an encapsulation of everything I hate about the 4th and 5th Transformers movie. To this day, his face gives me nightmares.
No. That's Optimus Prime.
That being said, the main reason I decided to get this figure was because he looks really cool, frankly, in his robot mode from the promo images. And in addition to that, he is the only individual standing triple changer in the Masterpiece movie scale. Here's the deal. I have never once transformed him into his helicopter mode. So for me, knowing all this, the big question I had going into this figure was whether this third helicopter mode, which we all know isn't very good based off the promo images, sacrificed and created problems for the other two modes. And that's generally the biggest problem, I think, with triple changers. It usually creates compromises for the other two modes so that none of them are good. Here's what I have to say. This figure's really freaking cool. I can almost confidently say that I have never seen a figure with such perfect tolerances. Every single joint on this figure is the perfect level of tightness. Not too loose, not too tight. It feels really high quality in hand. This guy is made of premium freaking materials. If you've been paying attention to this, you might have noticed that I do have him transformed differently than the official version would have you. The reason why is because that collar seriously hinders his entire head articulation. He has a really big helmet, and it keeps him from moving about as it is, and that collar makes it so it's virtually impossible for him to look up at all. Because of that, I have them moved out, shifted upwards, and then folded up, and I can actually move his head the way that I want to, for the most part. His paint's awesome. The subtle highlights of blue on the black here is something I've never seen on any Masterpiece, and it makes this, instead of looking like a toy, look like just a shrunken down Transformer. The main accessories he comes with are 2 small swords, 2 large, beautiful swords. Then it packs in his vehicle rear view mirrors in separately. I'll talk about those in a second. He utilizes all of them, and they can all be stored on him at any given moment, so nothing has to go into a plastic bag, and they look really cool. The swords are, for whatever reason, some of the coolest I've seen on a transforming figure. This figure also doesn't need a stand. Yay. I never thought I'd be grateful for that, but after Windblade, I really am. All right, let's talk about articulation, because at this point, you probably thought that I considered this figure perfect. My gosh, was it so close, guys? This is where this figure absolutely falls on its face. And the thing is, from the waist up, it's perfectly good. He has double jointed elbows, he has an ab crunch, he has a waist swivel, but then we take a look at the waist down. I'm at a loss for words. His metal thigh plates have this little spring-loaded thing where they can move down to allow you to move the thigh up. The thigh moves up like 15 degrees. I'm not exaggerating. That is the highest they go. And it sucks too, because his knee articulation is perfectly fine. It's got 2 different joints, so it bends back. But as I've always said, there is no point in a double jointed or well-articulated knee if there's no thigh articulation. In addition to that, the problems don't just stop there, because the whole leg structure for articulation is seriously problematic. The inner thighs are composed of the front of the car. Once they actually fold up into the thighs, they still stick out to a strange degree, so you can't even get him into a straight up and down pose. He's constantly forced into this A stance pose. That being said, let's take a look at his other mode, and I do want to say his transformation is a joy. Boy, if I did not expect that. It's the perfect balance between being complex and being intuitive, and luckily for everybody, Bugatti, he comes packed in his vehicle mode, and I think that's a great way to go. I think every third-party company should come packed in their vehicle or alt mode. It's fun, it's clever, and most importantly, it does not get in its own way while transforming, with one exception, which I will explain in just a second. His vehicle mode, this is a great looking Bugatti mode. I really don't know what else they could have done, and the minimal paint that it does have in this vehicle mode, like on the rims of the wheels, looks so good, and they are actually rubber wheels. I don't know if I mentioned that. That's quite a nice touch. I mentioned during transformation there is one exception to something getting in the way while transforming it, and that would be the foot. As you're trying to swivel it over the rest of the leg plates to get it to vehicle mode configuration, you have to like bend it over this tab, because other than that, that is the single only thing that gets in its own way that feels like it was forced. Everything else fits in perfectly and tabs in very nicely. He doesn't really have weapon storage in his alternate mode. I could care less because I'm not going to be displaying him in this mode, and if I was, I wouldn't want a bunch of swords just tabbed all over his car. It's worth mentioning that he is technically out of scale for the Masterpiece movie collection. He stands a full head taller than Masterpiece movie Bumblebee, and he's about at the same height as Ironhide. He's supposed to be a little bit shorter than Bumblebee. The thing is I don't care. Don't get me wrong, I am normally very picky about scale. Normally it's a big deal to me. But the thing is, I don't ever remember him standing next to other characters. He doesn't have a distinct scale in my mind. Okay, so in summary, back to the original most important question I had going into this figure, which is, does this figure have a bot mode and a primary Bugatti alt mode that stands on its own as a worthy figure, even if we ignore that third triple changing helicopter mode? The answer for me is a resounding yes, because this figure masters the 2 out of the 3 modes that it does have. What I'm trying to say is, if you purchase this figure, not even knowing that it had a third helicopter mode, I'm convinced you would never know otherwise, because it conceals it so well. Speaking of summaries, that also brings us to Windblade and whether she's worth it or not. I know I talked about a lot of problems I have with her and concerns and annoyances, and I will admit over the last few days I've grown to dislike her a little bit more, but I can confidently say that if you don't particularly care about the figure but you collect G1 scale figures, she will fit in very nicely, and her paint alone is worth the price of admission to be able to see. However, if you don't collect Masterpiece scaled G1 characters, I'm not going to recommend this figure for you. Windblade's gonna get a 6.8 out of 10 for me. It's like this arbitrary in-between number I use. As far as drift is concerned, again, he was so close to a perfect score, but that leg articulation is a huge problem. That will absolutely not keep me from giving a strong recommend for this figure, for not just people who like the character drift, but for people who collect movie Masterpiece scaled figures. He'll fit in nicely. So he's gonna be a whopping 9 out of 10 for me. So close to a perfect score, but I'm really happy with him either way. Both these companies have done a very solid job, but I absolutely have to hand the winner over to Metagate, which is the company that created this version of Drift. Again, you could purchase both of these figures at Shozi Store, and I have the links to both of them in the description below. And as a reminder, don't forget about Shozi Store's major 11/11 sale taking place in just a few days. Anyways, that's my thoughts for these figures today. Later, guys.